You guys here? Yaakov, you hear me?
Hear you, yes.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Pesachim Daf Nun. We begin today learning Agadata, how in the imminent future, when Mashiach is going to come, Hashem is going to expand the boundaries of Yerushalayim. The reason why we are learning about this right now is because we had in the Mishnah the person who accidentally took meat of kachim kalam, outside the boundaries of Yerushalayim. So we're going to learn about how those boundaries themselves will be substantially widened. We're going to have an amazing story of what happened to Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. He had what's called today a NDE experience. He had a near-death experience. It's amazing that in Ksubas Daf Ayin Zayin, we have regarding his father, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi himself, who actually heard something from his son, as we'll learn today. And over there, when the Malach HaMavos came to get Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he told him, he quoted something that he heard from his son because of his NDE experience. He got a 30-day extension. And then how he, so to say, he fooled the Malach HaMavos and he went into Gan Eden, Neshama Beguf, and he stole the knife of the Malach HaMavos. That's very much connected to the story that we're going to learn right now. We're going to learn about the tremendous wealth that we will have, La'asad Lavai, as well as something about the names of Hashem, which is very much connected to this year, Tafshan Pei Alef's Basa Lagani Maimer, Tafshan Chaf Aleph, regarding the Shemois of Hashem. No, we're not going to be learning about the Shem Tzavakos, but we're going to be learning about Bechlal, the meaning of a Shem, Kishem, Kisha'ani, Lefi Maisai, the Ani, Nikra, all of that we'll have here in the Gemara. We're going to start on today's daf, the new Pedic, the fourth Pedic, Makim Shenahagu. Now, really, the Pedic is going to be speaking about Minhagim. Many of them are much broader. The topic of Minhagim will go beyond Pesach. But we will be learning about, number one, there is an Isur to work out of Pesach, La'achar Chatzois. We're going to learn Rashi, we're going to learn Tosfos, whether that was only Bizman Abayis, whether that's even now. And then there were certain places that had a minig not to work from the morning. The type of work that we are speaking about is not to work connected to Malachas Shabbos, Malachas Yantiv, Pashat not to work, not to go to work. Yes, to work to get ready for Yantiv, but not to work in one's own mundane Parnasa activities. When does a person have to follow a minig? What happens if you travel from a place, in your place of origin, there was a minig, you're going not to settle in a new location, but you're only there temporarily. You're there, you're visiting. Are you bound? Do you have to keep the minhagim from the place that you left? Do you have to keep the minhagim of the place that you came to? We're going to learn about people who abstain from work in a place where it's ideal to abstain from work, out of Shabbos, out of Yantiv, but they abstain, shaloi lishma, or they are people that Bechlal don't work. Whether that type of abstinence, Shaloi Lishma, is valid, has some importance, and it does. That's the sugya of Metoich, Shaloi Lishma, Ba Lishma. We're going to learn about undesirable business practices. We're going to learn about the koyach of the minig of our forefathers, how if in many cases, if our parents or grandparents, our forefathers, if they undertook a minig, that we are bound by those minhagim. And actually, we're going to conclude, God willing, if we'll have enough time, circumstances in which we need not keep the minhagim of our forefathers if there's some sort of takala that could come out from their minig. And if we'll have again time, we're going to learn a very important commentator of the Tzlach that's going to actually understand in the Gemara that there are scenarios that at least you have to do a hataras nadarim when you want to get out of a minig. You should do it, but you should not keep a minig that can lead to something not good. But you have to be matir deneded, and there are certain times that you don't even need to do that, and much more. We left off 3 lines from the top of the Amid on Daf Nun, beginning quoting Psukim in Zachariah. This will not be the only pasuk of Zachariah that we will learn in this first section of Agadata. Baruch atah Adino Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol neh b'dvarim. Now this pasuk is referring to Melchemes Gog uMagog, which will happen connected with the coming of Mashiach. And it says in the pasuk, V'hoya b'yom hahu, and it will be on that day, that lo yia or yekaros v'kipoyin, that will be, there will not be light of yekaros. Yekaros normally means a strong light, a good light. Kipoyin normally means a dim light. The pshat is that there's going to be such darkness that there won't be not the stronger light nor a weaker light. Taichas the Gemara here adrush. Ma yekaris vikipayan amar Abelazar. That yekaris refers to oir sheyakar ba'olam hazeh. What light has value in olam hazeh? Rashi says the light of the sun. However, the pasuk is telling us a good pasuk that with the war of Gog and Magog, with the coming of Mashiach, that which is considered very important, ba'olam hazeh, will be kafui la'olam haba. It will be trivial. It will be insignificant. It will become dimmed, not because the light will become darker, because we won't value it that much, because we're going to have access to a much greater light. Oh, like we know in the creation, that there was the first light that Hashem put into the world that was hidden during this entire time, that will become revealed, and that will outshine the light that we have right now. Now, this can be referring to a ruchniistic light that will be revealed, or versus the physical light that we have here, or this can be referring to our understanding of the Torah. And as Rabbi Yochanan says, that Elu, what is the light that is considered yakar right now? Negoim and ahalois, which are the hardest parts of Torah Shabbat Peh. Sheyakarim ba'olam hazeh, they are yakar because they're very hard to acquire. You have to really have yegiyah. But when Mashiach will come and we will be able to access the Torah, this level of the Torah will come to us a lot easier. Therefore, they will be called kipuyim, they will be called trivial, la'olam habam, givaldik. And this is mamish, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Igeres HaKodesh, Igeres Chavav, when he brings the Rayim Ehevnen Parshas Nosoi, that the main occupation of learning Torah now is Ilana the Torah. What will become more revealed? What will be our occupation in Torah? Ilana the Chaya. And as the Alter Rebbe explains, that when we have access to the inner godliness of the Torah, then our understanding and knowledge, even knowledge of the halachos of the Torah, come automatically, because they are really just the manifestation of the inner light. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Amar, what this refers to is that Elu b'nei Adam, that there are certain people that sheyikarim hein ba'olam hazeh, that now they are chashuv, they are esteemed. However, when Mashiach will come and there'll be this greater light revealed, we're going to see a deeper truth that then the kifuin hein la'olam haba, then they won't be considered that chashuv. In other words, the outer, the inner. So when the outer Torah is revealed, so we are living in a world in which we connect to everything in a more chitzoniistic way, and many people, their outer person is amazing, and taka that should be respected, as the Alter Rebbe writes in the beginning of Tanya. But as we're going to go into a whole deeper level of reality, we're going to have access to the inner part of the Torah. We're going to see the inner part of the person that it's not necessarily aligned, and this goes both ways. I mean, those people that can look very what you might call pashut, and before the Baal Shem Tov, people use that word in a derogatory way. A pashut person, they will be the greatest people. The pshitos of Anoshim Pshutim are connected to the pshitos of Atzmos, and this is kiha that Rabbi Yosef bereid Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Then when Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Shua ben Levi Cholosh, when he became ill, there was a time that ve'isnegid means that he entered a coma. It's called today an NDE. In other words, it looked to the people there that he passed away, but he came back. And kihadad, when he returned, Amalei Avua Mai Chazus. What did you see in the Olam HaElyon? So Amalei, this is a famous Gemara. He tells him, Olam Hafuch Reisi. I saw an upside down world, and he explained himself that Elyonim Lemata, the ones here that are Elyonim, the people that we looked up to here, they're Lamata. The ones, the first white line that are Tachtoinim, are Lamaila. The ones that are here Tachtoinim, they are Lamaila. In other words, it's not, he saw the inner, he saw the Pnimius, and he called that a Olam Hafuch. So his father corrected his verbiage. He tells him what you saw was not a topsy-turvy world. This world is the topsy-turvy world. What you saw over there is the emes. Amalei B'ni, my son, Olam Baru Re'isa. There was clear. And then he told him, Va'anan heichi hasam. What about we? Talmidei Chachamim. Are we also the ones who are esteemed here? Are they less esteemed over there? So Amalei, the son responded, no, that kihecha de isu anan hacha Hachi is Hinan Hasam, that the Talmidei Chachamim, both over here and over there, are Yikaran. And exactly as we learn in Tanya, that's not the Benini, that's a tzaddik. That a tzaddik is a person that not only elevated the Machshava Dibur Umaisa, for which right now this is what's most important, but they were Mavared and they were Mahapech, their Midas, their Seichel and Midas. So no matter which reality they live in, they excelled, they exceeded the Aral Yoinim, both Lamata and Lamayim. And then he adds more information. That's Vishamati Shahayoimrim, and I heard them say, Ashrei mi shabal lekan v'talmudei biyadei. That fortunate is the man that comes here with his learning in his hand. And as Hasidus interprets, that learning is step number one, you have to learn. But then there was someone, there's in Yiddish, there's heden, and then there's dead heden. We want for the learning to teach us. We want for the learning to be integrated within us. And how do we know that that happened? When the learning came down into our action, when the learning came down into our hand. So even those people who are unable to elevate their moichin and their midas, which is most of us, which is the Beinani, but fortunate is the person that took the learning and put it down in his hand. The ikar hamaisa hua ikar. And by the way, this is the statement. Ashri Misha Balakam Talmud Biyadai, that Rabbi Shua ben Levi in Ksubas Daf Ayin Zayin, when the Malach HaMavos came to take him, he told him, wait, give me 30 days to review my learning or to integrate more my learning to be able to come over there with my Talmud in my hand. Right. And V'Shemaiti Shoy Oimrim. And I also heard them say that Harugi Malchus, that those people that were killed by the government because they're Jews, right? People that died Al Kiddush Hashem, Yidden that passed away, Al Kiddush Hashem, Ein Adam Yochel Amel B'Mechitzosam. Them I couldn't even see. No one can get near them. That's the highest level. So the Gemara wants to know, Man Ninu, who was that referring to? If it's referring to Rabbi Kiva V'Chaveirov, right, that we read about in the davening on Yom Kippur. In other words, that the greatness is because they were killed, Al Kiddush Hashem. So the Gemara says that can be what Neshumei Ruge Malchus V'Suloi. Even if that wouldn't have happened to them, who can be in the mechitza of Rabbi Akiva? These are the tzaddikim gedolim. These are neshamot of Atzilus. Ella, this refers to Harugei Lud. And like Rashi reminds us the story that we have in Tainus, that there was a time that a daughter of an important Roman officer was kidnapped and murdered. And they put the blame on an entire Jewish community. They were going to kill all, God forbid, the entire community. Two brothers said, we were the ones that did it, even though they didn't. And they died. That they're called the Harugei Lud. And prior to that story, they were not Rabbi Akivas. They died because they were moiser themselves to save a Jewish community. On them we say that Ein Adam Yachal La'amid B'Mechitzosam. Now that we quoted the pasuk in Zechariah, until now it's not connected to our sugi and Pesachim. But like we mentioned, we did learn in the Mishnah about the boundaries of Yerushalayim. So now we're going to go weiter. It says in the pasuk, Bayoimahu, again, connected to the war of Gog and Magog, after we will win over our enemies, there'll be a Netzach and al-Mulchama. It says that Yia al-Mitzilois Hasus. Now the word Mitzilois is a difficult word to interpret. The literal types of Mitzilois are bells that are put as adornments on horses. That even the Mitzilois Hasus will be Kodesh Lashem. Now the Pshat is also that people will donate so much money to the Beis HaMikdash that even the bells of the horses, or people are going to bring so many karbanos, and you have to have Pashat Klei Kodesh to prepare them in. There won't be enough kalim. So they're going to use the bells that were originally made to adorn horses. They were beautiful because they were adornments. They were made out of gold. They were made out of silver. They're going to become donated to the Bedek HaBayis, and they will be used to prepare the Psar Kodesh. But there's something about the Mitzilas that we have to understand, that even the Mitzilas Asus will be Kodesh Lashem. So my Mitzilas Asus, we're going to have three approaches. God is going to expand the boundaries of Yerushalayim. How far out? How much bigger? That from when a horse runs in the morning, dawn, until when the shadow, Mitzilos, is under the horse. When is the shadow under? Noon. So the amount of physical space that you cover, that a horse that's running covers from dawn until noon in each direction, all of that will be added to Yerushalayim. And Abba Lazar Omer, Another interpretation that kol mitzilos, all of the bells, again, the adornments, shetoilon l'sus, bein ein of that they hang on a horse in between the eyes. In other words, it's an adornment, which means it's made out of precious metals. Yia kodesh l'Hashem will be donated to Hashem. Rabbi Yochanan Amar kol biza shaboizes in Yisrael, that all of the spoils that the Yidden are going to plunder from our enemies that are going to be attacking Yerushalayim. How much spoils? The spoils that we gather from dawn, here again, until noon, which means until the time that when the horse is still running, the shadow is underneath the horse, all of that will be donated, Yakodesh Lashem. Okay, so says the Gemara, in other words, we're going to donate to the Beis HaMikdash this tremendous amount of wealth and of booty that we're going to take from our enemies. That's the meaning of the hemshech of this pasuk in Zechariah, that v'hoya hasiros, that the pots in the Beis HaMikdash, hasiros are the pots in the Beis HaMikdash, they will be as precious as the mizrakim that are before the Mizbeach. Now we learned about this in Kachim. Mizrak is the name of the keli in which you receive the dam of a carbon. And because of it being mamish, a clay kodesh, when we were able to afford, they were made out of gold and silver. So it says in the pasuk that not only the mizrakim that are used directly to be mekabel the dam, those were mamish precious metal mizrakos. All of the pots, even the ones that are used to cook foods, they will be as precious. They will be made out of gold and silver. How will the Beis HaMikdash have so much money? Because all of the booty that we're going to loot from the dawn until noon, all of it will donate. But the other two interpretations, that the expansion of Yerushalayim will be until that place, that we're going to donate the adornments of the horses. That's not that much booty, okay? So so the Gemara says, well, if that's the pshat in the beginning of the pasuk, then the Seifa is making another point. Number one, let's say that Yerushalayim will be expanded. And number two, that the Ma'atre Yisrael, the Eden will become very wealthy. And what does a Yid do with his Gashmias? We make it into Ruchnias. And that includes donating it to the Beis HaMikdash. Umisnadvei umais. Says the Gemara weiter. That the word Mitzilois goes to the spoils that we will donate. That's the meaning of the pasuk. That since the Beis HaMikdash is going to be so wealthy, that Kanani here means a merchant. Now the Beis HaMikdash, when people donated items that had Kedushas Haguf, but then there was Bedek Habayis. What do you think the Beis HaMikdash did with all those things that were donated? They needed to sell it. So we all know that if you have something that you're selling, if you are a good merchant, you'll make more money. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're going to lose money. Especially sometimes people feel it was donated anyways. It's a win for the Beis HaMikdash anyways. You can't look at it that way. So up until the third Beis HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash needed to have real merchants. They're called Kananim. And they were the ones that monetized to their best ability all of the things that were donated to the Beis HaMikdash, that they turned into money that they used for temple upkeep. But in the future, we won't need to have a Kanani. Why not? Because again, the Beis HaMikdash is going to be so wealthy, we won't need merchants. There, it won't make a difference. You'll make another $1, you'll make $1 less. Again, that the word Kanani means Ein Kanani. It means that amongst the Jewish people, there won't be poor people anymore. Now, the Kanani Minolan the Ikra Tagar. How do you know that the word Kanani means a Tagar? We also know from the Chumash, Kanani is one of the names of the 7 nations. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you how I know that, because it says, right in Parshas Vayeshev, regarding Yehuda, right after Mechiras Yosef, Vayarshom Yehuda Bas Ish Kanani, and he married her. Shema Tomar. And now Mike Kanani asks the Gemara, what do you think? Elema, that whenever the Torah uses the word Kanani, it only means one of a nation member, a member of the nation of the Canaanites. God forbid. Efshin, is it possible that Avraham Avinu came, the Hizeres Yitzchak, really through Eliezer, not to marry into the Canaanites? Yitzchak came and he sent Yaakov away, not to marry local, not to marry into the Canaanites. So we already knew that we don't want to marry into that family, into that nation. So the Yehuda, God forbid, went to Nasiv. Elamat must mean, Elam Shimon Lakish, Kanani means he married the daughter, Bas Gavra Tagara. Tagara means Gavra, a prominent merchant. Kanani means a merchant. And as we have a pasuk in Hosea, where it says Canaan, there doesn't mean a Canaanite as a nation. Canaan means a merchant, a soicher. In his hand, he has scales of deceit. We're speaking about the merchant that's trying to trick people, but it's a lashon. Kanan is the meaning of a merchant, and there won't be needs again to have any more merchants. Another source that Kanani means a merchant, because it says in the pasuk in Hosea regarding the downfall of Tzur, that Asher Soichareha Sarim, that before the downfall of the Tyre was the hush of a city, their traders were mamish princes, and Kinnoneha. We're speaking about Tzur, not about Canaan. So again, their merchants were Nichbedei Aretz. They were the most chashuva people of the land. Just another source that Canaan means a merchant. So continuing quoting the psukim in Zechariah regarding the imminent present when Mashiach will come. So it says Hashem lamelach al kol haaretz, that God is going to be a king on the whole world. And by Yom Hahu Yi Hashem echad u'shmo yachad. So asks the Gemara the obvious question: what then? God is going to be one? Atnu ha'idna lav echatu. Is God not one now? Amar Rav Acha bar Chanina, no, that loy ka'olam hazeh ha'olam haba. Olam hazeh, as we had in brachos. Now al basuras toivos. What does a person say? Baruch ha'toiv meitiv. If a person hears a basura ra'ah, al basuras ra'os, you say baruch dainu emes. That means that we now, with our consciousness, we don't see the hashgacha pratis. We don't understand the hashgacha pratis and that which appears to us to be bad. We know it's from God. God is running the world. But there's hatoiv meitiv and there's dainu emes. La'olam haba kuloi hatoiv meitiv. Kul hatoiv meitiv means that we will then see the hashgacha pratis and everything that's going to happen. Doesn't mean that what's going to happen will be different. It means that we're going to understand reality on a whole different level. And therefore, that's the first pshat, that by Yom Hahu Hashem echad u'shmo yachad. Gemara says, "Vayter u'shmo yachad ma yachad." What's mean if God's name is one? Ha'atu ha'idna lav shmo yachadu. So I'm going to Yitzchak again. Loi ka'olam hazeh ha'olam habam. Ha'olam hazeh. God's holy name, Shem HaMafaydash, the Shem HaEtzem, is written, spelled with a Yud K, but when we pronounce it, the Nikra Ba'alav Dalet. In other words, as we learn in Hasidus, that speaking is revealing. And the Yud K, the level of godliness that we are referring to when we write Yud K Vav K, that is now concealed, which is very much connected to why certain things happen to us. We don't see the Hashgacha. We have to say Baruch Dayan Ha'emes. We believe, but we don't see it. But Abel Olam Haba, Kuloi Echad. Kuloi Echad means that we're going to go with the girsa that we have on the side, that Nichtav beYudkei and the Nikra beYudkei. Because Yudkei, which is referring to that which is beyond nature, that will become revealed. That's the pshat of speaking. Not speaking out what is written means that really what's here is concealed. You can't be megalid through dibur. Then it's going to be revealed. And Saba Rava, the Gemara tells a story that once Rava wanted Midrash of Pirka, says Rashi, he wanted to teach in the Beis Midrash how to read Yud Kei Vav Kei, the meaning of Yud Kei Vav Kei. In other words, he wanted to be megala a certain level of godliness. Amar Elyahu Sava. So an elder came, again, the Tosfos Chulam Davav says that generally Sava goes to Aliyah Navi. He told Rava, no, that it says in Parsha Shemois, right, Zeh Shmi La'olam. Now La'olam means the pshat, this is my name forever, but it's not written with the Vav. La'olam is spelled Lamed Aleph, Lamed Esreifmen, Schlossmen, and therefore it could be pronounced La'alem, Helem, Zeh Shmi La'alem Ksiv. Now we're meant to hide God's name. We have all these Sipurim from our Rabbeim that before they passed away, they wanted to be, or the Rebbe Rashab wanted to be Megalan and Purim Fabrengen. He wanted to show the Olam that Dvar Hashem that's being Mahave and Machaya, the Kalim on the table in the Fabrengen. And the Friedrich Rebbe told him it's not yet the time for this. This is a parallel story to this. Ravina Rami, it says in this pasuk that we just quoted in Shemois, Zeshmi Lo'olam. Again, Lo'olam means, we read it La'alim. That means God's name should be concealed. But then it says, V'zeh zichri, l'doir v'doir. L'doir v'doir means gilui. It's going to be revealed forever. So is it to conceal or is it to reveal? So Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Loi kish ani nichtav, ani nikra. Nichtav ani beYudkei, And the Nikrani, Ba'alev Dalid. And as we learn in Hasidus, that Aleph Dalid, Shem Admus is Malchus. In other words, Taka, God is beyond creation. Why? The godliness in creation all comes from Hashem's desire to be a king, and Ein Melech B'loi Am. So it is from the level of Admus, of Shem Malchus, that all of the creation begins, from Malchus Datzilus. So that is what we have revealed over here. But on the other hand, like we learned in this year's Maimer, Tavshan Pei Aleph, that Taka, that Lefi Maisai, the Rebbe emphasizes Ani Nikra. That's the paradox. Taka, the names are being Megala, a specific Maisai, all through Shem Malchus, Shem Adnai. But who are we calling out to? Not to the Sphira. We are calling out to the essence of God, Ani Nikra. So you have this, that's why didn't you write Aleph Dalet? No, you're writing Yudke. Because we understand that even before we are able to have the Gilui of Atzmos, that's going to happen in the future, and when the Gilui of Atzmos will happen, then it's going to be spelled Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and we're going to read it Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. With many details to that, really it says Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, or Loss of Love, it's going to be Yud-Kei Yud-Kei, also from this week's Parsha, V'chulei, Gavaldik. But right now, and that's going back to his NDE experience, that we only have access to the level of Achorayim. So therefore, the Shemais change. Therefore, the Torah that we learn is the Torah of Ilna, the Toivara, and what we are striving for is to get to the Ilona the Chaya, to get to the Pnimius, to get to the Shem Ha'etzem, Hadran Allah Elo Oivrim. Okay, we will come back to you, Perek Elo Oivrim. Now we are beginning the fourth Perek Makom Shenahagu. Just to give a heads up, that after this Perek, after the fourth Perek, from the fifth Perek until the last Perek, not including the last Perek, we're going to be learning about the Koren Pesach. One of the reasons we mentioned why Pesachim is B'lashon Abim, right? The other Mesechters are not called B'lashon Abim, and that's because there was two Mesechters. There was one about Chametz HaMatzah, which is primarily, I know we spoke about many other details, but we're learning about Pasha the halachis of the Yom Tiv, everything other than Be'ikr focusing on the Koren Pesach. I know we also had about the Koren Pesach, but just to know from the fifth chapter until the ninth chapter, including the ninth chapter, we're going to be learning really Kachim, and we're going to come back in Arvei Pesachim to, so this is Perek right now, and then the final Perek is going to be dealing about halachas that we have even in Golos. Now, says the Mishnah, this is a very broad topic, beyond it, it's beyond just Pesach. But it's going to focus on Pesach. So the Mishnah is already telling you that we are speaking about a minhag that only goes until midday, which it means the Mishnah already is implying that after Chatzois, not working, not the type of work that we can't do on Shabbos, not working in one's business. That is something that may not be done me'ikar adin. What's the Ikar Adin? Let's begin with the top toys. V'smakim shenahagu oimari. In the name of the Riva that we have in the Yerushalmi. That why is Erev Pesach different than all the other Yomim Tovim? We don't have an Isur to work from Chatzois. Says the Yerushalmi, the Zman Pesach Machatzois ve'elach. That since the time to bring the Koren Pesach is from midday on, so during the times of the Beis HaMikdash, when you bring a carbon, that day is a Yom Tov for you. And really, v'af yachid ka'amar, Hassan, b'shari yemais hashana, and that's true b'chlal, that during the year, on the day that you bring a carbon, when Mashiach is coming, on a day that we will bring a carbon, that day it's asur b'malach. Can't go to work. Ayoy bazoi, we should not be allowed to work me'ikir adin the whole Erev Pesach because of the Koren Pesach that we bring. That's what the Gemara asks in the Yerushalmi. Uparachem kein year kol hayom asur kama yachid sherevi carbon. So the Gemara answers over there the first narrow line in Toisus of Afarashasam bishum deroi lahakrev mishachas. During the year, if I bring a carbon, even if I bring it in the afternoon, I could have brought it right after the Talmud Shel Shachar. I can bring it the whole day. But since the Koren Pesach can only be brought afternoon, right? So therefore, the Isur of not doing Melacha is from midday onwards. I let no one be allowed to work any day because every day they brought for us the carbon Talmud. So Tosfos says, then we will never be able to work. That won't work. Torah says, gather your grain. Who's going to plant the grain? Well, so in other words, there's an Isur to work on the day that you bring a carbon, which already means that l'chayda, you can argue nowadays that we don't yet have a Beis Hamikdash, that Isser should not apply. So Tosfos concludes, v'nida, the end of Tosfos, the afuz man hazeh, even though the lek hakrava kiven shenesan oz, so that Isser continues. Then you have Rashi. Rashi holds that the Isser is connected with, we don't want people to be so occupied that there's so many details that have to be prepared for Pesach. If they're going to go to work, they might not do what they need to do. They might not burn the chametz. They might not prepare the matzah, v'chulei, v'chulei. And then some people had a minig that they began with the Isser of Malacha from the morning. So it says the Mishnah again, in the place that there's a minig that you are allowed to work, do your own Malacha on Arvei Pesachim until Chatzos, Oisin, follow your local minig. And here comes the question, what happens if I am traveling from one place to the other? So if I am not planning to return, that's not what the Mishnah is referring to. Follow the local minig. Question is, if you are going on a trip and you plan to return, you're only there as a guest, so which minig should you follow? Says the Mishnah, or vice versa, or you come from a place that the minig was not even to work from the morning, not even until Chatzos, but you come to a place that until Chatzos they do malacha. So says the Mishnah, noisnen olav chumrei makim sheyatza misham and the chumrei makim shahalach l'sham. The Chacham Tzvi makes it clear that this does not apply to the big question that people have if they're going nowadays to Eretz Yisrael as a guest. Do they have to keep 1 day Yom Tov or 2 day Yom Tov? It's not connected to our Mishnah, because when I go to Eretz Yisrael right now, by the way, the Chacham Tzvi is the one that paskins that you always keep 1 day. If you're in Eretz Yisrael, you're a guest, you keep 1 day. Alter Rebbe doesn't paskin that way. But his vart is because if you were to move there, you would not be allowed to keep 2 days. If you are in a location, that already changes the scenario. That's not what we are talking about. Here we're speaking about a certain activity or a certain refrain from an activity that whichever way you go, you will never be violating Ikar Adin. The question is, are you keeping the minig or are you not keeping the minig? And in such a case, the Mishnah begins to say, you have to be machmir on both sides. Whichever one is more chamer. Daf nun amud beis. It's not so simple. And the al yeshana adam, says the Mishnah on top of the line, mipnei machloikis. And this, as you'll chap, is an inherent stira. Mishnah is saying, don't deviate from the local custom because you're going to create a machlokes. Now Rashi points out, the Gemara is going to ask, hold on. That means, look inside the top of Rashi, the Gemara parach. If you come from a place she'ein oisin to a place where they do melacha, in other words, you came to a place where they're more lenient. What did the Mishnah say on Amud Aleph? You have to pick the chumrah. Well, if you're going to pick whichever chumrah, then you will not do. If you're not going to do malacha, then you will create machlokes. In other words, this line, don't create machlokes, l'chayra means always follow the local custom. That contradicts what the Mishnah began. We're going to get to that in the Gemara. And now the Mishnah wants to make it clear that this rule of noisten all of chumrei demakim, where you came from, and the local chumrah, that kayotze boy, that's not only for Pesach or for this question, for this minig of not working Erev Pesach until Chatzos. Kayotze boy hamoilach peirav shviz. So let's go in Eretz Yisrael, where there's an iser to work the land on the Shemitah year. And not only that, but Bechlal, you can't do anything that shows that you're the balabas over your own land. You can't put up a fence. If you harvest, you can't harvest more than your immediate need. And even that which you harvested for your immediate need, another than when can you consume it? When that type is still out there on the field. But the moment whatever you harvested is depleted on the fields, and as we learned, we divide that Eretz Yisrael into 3 parts. It's not in the whole Israel, it's in your region. Then you are obligated to do biur, peiros, shvi'is. Biur, machlokes, Rambam, and Tosfos. Important. Rambam, we learned that Rambam says that if there's no more of this food at that time out there in the fields, you have to take out what you gathered and burn it, destroy it. Biur. Tosfos says, no, you don't have to destroy it. You have to put it out there. You have to declare that it's hefker. And then you, like anyone else, can take some of it back. Be that as it may, there is a moment where you're obligated to do biur, peiroi, shmita. So what happens if I am coming, looking back in the Mishnah, makam shekalui, I traveled and I gathered wheat And the place that from where I came from, over there, there's no more wheat out there in the fields. It's depleted. And I arrived in a makom shaloi kolum. Or vice versa, both ways. So the question is, am I chayiv in biur? Whatever biur means, to burn it, to be mafked it. So the Mishnah says, in both cases, chayiv levayir. That's the kayoytze boy. Because what the Mishnah is saying is mamish, the way it said on Amud Aleph, or we had on Amud Aleph, that noisten olav chumrei makim sheyatzim yisham, and v'chumrei makim shahalach l'sham. That's the sheet of the Tanach. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, we're going to just read the words now. Say v'havei l'cha af ato, that we tell the person, go out. These are the words that we tell them. Go out and bring it for yourself. What does it mean? We'll see in the Gemara what that means. Okay, let's start with the Gemara. So much over here. The first thing is, the Mishnah said, the words of the Mishnah is, Mokim shunahagu lasis malacha ba'arba b'sacham at chatzois. Why did the Mishnah have to say at chatzois? Let me explain the kasha. The Gemara says, every erev yontif, every erev Shabbos, from chatzois on, one should not do malacha, which means don't do your own work. Now, halachically, there are many exceptions to that. If you are a hired worker, then you do your job. But let's just go to the Gemara over here. Being that this isur of malacha from chatzois ve'elach is not unique to erev Pesach, why did the Mishnah have to say the words at chatzois? The Mishnah should have said that, can you work out of Pesach? It depends on the minig. Makim shanahagu. We ourselves would have understood that this, depending on the minig, can only mean until chatzois, because michatzois ve'elach, never can you do malachim. That should be self-understood. So why did the Mishnah have to write the words at chatzois? That's the kasha of the Gemara. My iri arbe Pesachim, afila arbe Shabbos, is arbe yomim tovim. Nami, one is not allowed to do their own personal malacha, as we learned in the Brayso, the Tanya, that ha'isa malacha be'arbe Shabbos is yomim tovim and mincha l'mayla. Now, guys, very important. Remember brachas, mincha l'mayla. What's mincha l'mayla? So there's really mincha gedola and there's mincha ketana. Mincha gedola means the time from when the Talmud Shalbein Harbaim could be brought, and that is 12:30. Shosmaniyos. Mincha ketana is 3:30, even though Rashi writes that this mincha over here is Teisha Shoy Sumechza. The Marshal says no, he has a different girsa. Mincha Ulamayla means 12:30, and not only 12:30, the Hav of the Gemara is not exactly 12:30. Even before that, it's called Samach LeMincha, which means 12 o'clock. That's the Hav mean. That you can't do work from noon. Now, again, it's not, first of all, it's not the type of work that we can't do on Shabbos. It's about being busy with your own parnasa. You are supposed to get ready for Shabbos. You drive your car to the supermarket to buy food for Shabbos, no problem. It's doing your own work. And if you violate this isur, okay, it's unlike we learned in the Yerushalmi, according to the Yerushalmi that we learned in Tosfos, l'chayda working when there's a Beis Hamikdash, it's like an isur, it may even be an isur. It's a very strong isur. It's not on the same level, but there's an isur, and if you violate it, eina roya simen bracha lo'olam. The Rebbe teaches gavaldik. Eina roya simen bracha lo'olam. Why does it say lo'olam? The Rebbe writes that many times you see a bracha, you worked, you made money, but does the money last lo'olam? Or God forbid, will that money go for things that never should, God forbid, for a doctor's bill, or a person later will lose business and another business deal. So whenever Chazal say, Eina roya simen bracha lo'olam, it means that you might see now a bracha, but you should know that that bracha will not stay with you lo'olam. So, but bottom line is that since we already know that we may not work every Erev Shabbos, every Erev Yontiv, min mincha l'mayla, the Havamina is from Chatzois. So even if the Mishnah would not have said the words at Chatzois, we would have understood that the minig, work out of Pesach, not work out of Pesach, must mean before Chatzois, because after Chatzois, anyways, you can't work. So the Gemara says it's not correct. Answers the Gemara that over there by the Braisa, Taka min mincha ulamayla hu da'aser. And let's go with the Marshal's Girsa and Rashi from mincha gedola. From 12:30 you can't do malacha. But samach lemincha, but from noon, there's no problem at all. Over here, the isur of doing malacha out of Pesach, besides the minig, if you have such a minig, from the morning, even the ikara isur is from Chatzois itself, and not from mina mincha l'mayla. It's from samach lemincha, and not mina mincha l'mayla. Inami, Hassan over there, Siman Bracha Hu D'Lei Chazin. Taka, you can't do it, you won't have a Siman Bracha. Aval Shamute Loi Mishamtina Loi, but he won't be excommunicated. He won't be put into a Chedem. Over here, at of Pesach, after Chatzos, it's a much heavier Isser. Hachashamuti Nami Mishamtina Loi. Givaldi. Gufa, we learned above that Ha'osim Malacha Ba'arvi Shabbos Ba'arvi Yom Tovim and Amin Cholamayla. Or now we're adding more times, or if you do work, B'Matzoi Shabbos. What Matzah Shabbos are we talking to? We know many people that Erev Shabbos, we know them from Chatzos, they leave their business. Many people are that way. But what does it mean you can't do Malacha Matzah Shabbos? So Tosfos clarifies the Matzah Shabbos here is that when you are in Shul, and even when the Olam began to daven Ma'ariv, don't do Malacha until the end of the davening in the Shul. That's Matzah Shabbos. Or B'Matzah Yantiv. Or B'Matzah Yom HaKippurim. Or B'chol Makom Sheyesham Nidnu David, or any other time where there's even only a trace of a sin. And what does that refer to? Explains the Gemara. La'asuya Tainus Sibur. We're going to learn in Masechtas Tainus that when they made a series of fast days because there was a drought, the latter fast days are fast days in which there's a Tainus Sibur. And that is a very heavy Tainus Sibur in which we don't want people to be busy with their own melacha. Others explain that any Tainus Sibur, during the time that the Sibur is saying the slichas, people should not be doing their work. And if one does, ein aroya simin bracha, again, lo olam. The bracha that they have will not last forever. Tanach Rabbanan we learned regarding not working and the importance of refraining from working Erev Shabbos and every Erev Yontiv from your own melacha to have more time to get ready and to work for Shabbos and for Yontiv. Similarly, not working right after Shabbos, like Rashi says, that we add in Kavod Shabbos by adding Michoil LaKodesh. Let's say in a shul, we're not going to light the candles from Ma'ariv in shul, even by saying Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'Choletzkin. Don't do Malach in the shul right after Yontif before you finish davening. So Tanach Rabbanan, based on that, Yesh Zaris, there are certain people that are very hardworking. There's a reason, and they get rewarded for that. But the Yesh Zaris are people that are very hardworking, and the Nifsad, they lose because of their hard work. Similarly, Yesh Shafel will touch as lazy. Some people are lazy and they get rewarded for their laziness, Oigevalt, and the Yesh Shafel, which should normally be the rule, if you're lazy, you're going to lose. Explains the Brais. Zaris Veniskar, that refers to Avid called the Shapsa, a person who works the entire week, but Veloy Avid B'mali Shapsa, but he doesn't work from Mina Mincho L'mayla because he wants to get ready for Shabbos. This is a person who will get a reward for his or her refraint from work. Zaris v'nifsad, who is a hardworking person but loses out, a person who's so hardworking, they work all the way until Shabbos. The Avid Koli Shapsa and the Avid Mamali Shapsa. So whatever they think they benefited during those couple of hours, that is what they lose. Similarly, Shafel v'niskar, a person who's lazy, sometimes you get rewarded. Who's the lazy who gets rewarded? When do we reward laziness? That's the loy Avid Kula Shapsa, v'loy Avid Mamali Shapsa. If you have a person, not they work during the week, and taka they don't work out of Shabbos mechatzos va'elach. They don't work out of Yontav mechamin cholamayla. They don't work because they never work. So you would argue they're going to get rewarded for not working, right? We're going to call that a shaloy lishma refraint. They're not refraining because they're working people. They never work. You know what? The concept of that we value even shaloy lishma even goes over here. No, they didn't. They're b'chlal lazy people. But you know what? This Yid did not work min ha-mincha ulamayla erev Shabbos. For that person will get rewarded. Shavel v'nifsad, who is the lazy person that actually loses out? That's a shlamazel. Not he works during the week. But he wakes up erev Shabbos. Ooh, he finds business Friday afternoon. For that, he's also going to lose out. Amarava, he's applying it. That hani nashi the mechayza, the women in mechayza, they were very wealthy. They didn't go to work. And therefore they also didn't work out of Shabbos. We're not speaking about, again, when it's a mitzvah to work out of Shabbos for Shabbos. We're speaking about working their own stuff. And why didn't they work out of Shabbos in the afternoon? Mishum mifan kusahu, because they're delicate people. Offensive people. Nevertheless, so you should know, says Rava, that's a Rav. He's being malamed schus, that my chevre here, they're going to be rewarded. Shafel v'niskar kadina lahu. Their merit is, even though Shaloi Lishma is that they will be rewarded for the fact that they don't work their own personal stuff out of Shabbos, out of Yontif. Rami Rabbi pointed out the following contradiction. It says in a pasuk in Tehillim, Ki Gadol ad Shamayim Chazdecha, that God's kindness goes up until Shamayim. It says in another pasuk in Tehillim, Ki Gadol mi'al Shamayim Chazdecha, that God's chesed is me'al hashamayim, beyond the heavens, higher than the heavens. Okay, so even though we just mentioned that you get rewarded, even shaloi lishma, but still there is a difference between lishma and shaloi lishma. When a person does a mitzvah lishma, therefore they touch that, they touch that which is beyond nature. So the chesed comes from me'al hashamayim, l'mayla mahateva. Indeed, you are rewarded, even shaloi lishma, but you are only going to be connected to you're only going to be connected to the Seder Ishtalshus. Rabbi Yehuda, the Bach adds, why? Now, first of all, the second Tosfos points out that we just learned in Brachas, Daf Yud Zayin, that the look inside the Tosfos, they're no, not good. So that he explains that there are different levels. There is a person in Brachas that's learning Torah Kadei Shiur, to be boast, or to have information to rate on the learned people, or someone who's learning for negative reasons. That Nivra. Then we're speaking here stam shaloi lishma. You're not doing it l'shem shamayim, and with all understandings and the machlekes and of what lishma means. Right, the Egli Tal says that one thing is okay is for you to learn, to enjoy your learning. Actually, he says by the fact that in Birchas HaMitzvahs we say v'ha'arevna, let your words please be sweet. It's a mitzvah to find sweetness in our learning. Learning with a geschmack is part of the lishma. So whatever the lishma means, that even though shaloi lishma is on a lower level, it's still going to be rewarded. Chassidus says beautiful, that the toich of shaloi lishma is already the lishma. Not that now you're going to learn shaloi lishma. Eventually it's going to make you learn lishma, that even when a yid is learning now shaloi lishma, the toich, that's what we learned today in Amud Aleph, that everything has a pnimius and a chetzoinius, that even though I'm only connected now to my animal soul, but when I'm learning with my consciousness of my behema, I'm learning shaloi lishma. But now I also have a nefesh alikis. It's hidden from me. But my nefesh alikis now is learning lishma. So the inner of the shaloi lishma now is already lishma. Beautiful. Tadarabanan. If a person is expecting, is counting on the income of his wife, or the income that you bring in from a mill, we'll explain that in a moment. Taiches the Gemara, not that the wife should not work. The schar ishtoi that we are referring to, schar ishtoi is maskulta. Rashi says that one of the ways of earning a living was that if you owned a scale, a maskulta, a movable scale, and you would go into the marketplace and you would rent it out for a merchant. So that was a avoida that demanded a lot of work with very little return. Rechaya was something similar. You had a hand mill and you are going to be renting it out. You rent it out agarta to get a few grashkelach, a few cents for every time someone used it. That is a work that demands a lot of avodah, especially if one's wife is doing it. She's going out there and for very little return. That's something in which we say, but if a person has a wife who buys and sells, then we're not saying that's something that's praiseworthy. As it says, we say this in Eishes Chayil, that's Sadin also Savatimkar, that she makes cloaks and she sells it. And this is something that's part of her being a Eishes Chayil. Or in other words, we have Chevren in Bava Mitzia Dafnun Tesamadalef. The Gemara says that there's no bracha in one's house, or all of the brachas that are in one's house is only b'shvil kavoid ishtoi. That's the pshat. That if someone's wife is going to work, he should make an effort that her work should be b'chavadik. It should be less manual, and it should be more profitable. And if she's going to go and do a hard work to get a little bit of money, that's not the cover that we have to give to our wives. And there won't be a bracha in one's home. and I'm sure a lot more over here. Tanach Rabbanan, we learned in the Brais. I mean, the pshat is hametzapelis chad ishtay ein roisim bracha lo'elam. But anyways, weiter. Tanach Rabbanan, hamishtaker, if a person is making profit by selling konim, by selling reeds, people needed reeds to make fences. This is a merchandise that's very bulky, which means that if you are in this business, everyone sees you going around the market with huge trucks. It looks, wow, this guy's buying and selling. Or big kankanim with jars, big kalim. You're not making that much money, but it's a very bulky raw material. Here also, why? My tamo? Because kivan the nafish apach zayu, since it's a bloated, it's bulky, so shalta buhu eino, people are going to look at you, they're going to say, wow. And many times when people look at what you're doing, God forbid, you're opening yourself up to an ayin hara. In other words, you should do work that not everyone sees what you're doing. It should be concealed. Also connected to the previous statement. Yeah, a person's wife is going around the market and she's going here and she's going there. There's a certain amount of ayin hara. And similarly, Tanach Rabbanan, Tagorei Simta, people who are selling any schayra, but if they're selling it in the simta, they're selling it in the street, and you're doing business in public, you're opening yourself up to an ayin hara. Or umegadle behemadaka, people that are raising small animals. We know that there's an isur to raise small animals because they graze in other people's fields. Aside of the isur, everyone, they look at you and they're saying, wow, this guy is being megadle behemadaka. So they're opening themselves up to other people's ayin. Or if a person is cutting down good trees, aside of the isur, again, everyone sees what you're doing. So therefore, people, whenever there's a division, they always have to get the better portion. Whenever the smorgasbord opens up, they are the ones that are making sure to go there first. In other words, they behave in public in a way that everyone notices that they're out. They're out there. Because anything that you do, the tohu be'inshi, that people who look at you, they are astounded. That makes you vulnerable to the ayin hara. In other words, whatever you do in a way that's modest. Tanach Rabbanan, we learned in the Brais, there are 4 prutais. Ein bahem simim bracha lo'elam. What is that? Schar koisvin, the pay that you give to a scribe. When the scribe gets an income, there's no bracha in that money. The schar meturgamanim, the big people, they would have a meturgaman that would stand on their side to be their mouthpiece. They got paid. There's no bracha from that money. Schar Yisraelim is a admin of minor orphans, who Rashi says, who takes 50% of the profits, no bracha from that. And umois habois medina sayam, and people who make an income from the shipping industry. The shipping then was a very risky business because there were many times that ship would sink. So don't get involved in a business, even if there's a lot of upside, if there's a big risk. There's no bracha there. And the Gemara explains each one. Mishum the mechzik schar Shabbos. Why don't they have a siman bracha? So guys, we learned this in Shabbos. There's an isur to get schar for work that one does only on Shabbos. Of course, you're not getting paid on Shabbos. But if someone gets paid for something that they do and they only work on Shabbos, that's called schar Shabbos. Now, the truth is, like we have, let's say, a housemaid, and they're getting paid for the work that they do on Shabbos, but we're going to swallow it in work that they do during the week. Havla, that's mutter. But if this person is out there, everyone knows that he is a meturgaman. 99% of the work that the meturgaman did in public was done on Shabbos. So it appears that this whole salary comes from the work that he did on Shabbos. So that's why there's no bracha from that income. If you are admin, again, you're not an admin for an acceptable amount of money. You're taking 50% of the profit. Like that's the pshat, the way Rashi learns, that since you're taking a large amount of the profit, so if I work for an adult and I say I'm working for you, I want 50% of the profit if there's profit. If you agree to it, then there's nothing negative with that. You are Michael. You accept it. But since they are Yisraelim Ketanim, really halachically, they don't have the koich to be Michael. Even though they said they're Michael, it's not valid. So it's Keilu, he's stealing, he's taking advantage of the estate of Yisraelim, so there's no bracha. Mois, habois, medina sayam, why is there no bracha in that? Mishum the laf kol yom misrachesh nisa. Again, don't invest money in a business where there's a high chance you will lose your keren. Don't do that. So even though you made profit now, okay, you're going to go back and you're going to do another shipment. And one time the ship is going to sink. This is not shaykh to today. This is then when it was a high percent of ships that would sink. Elo, schar koisven, my tamam. Never. Why can't a sofer make a few dollars? What's wrong with him getting a psabracha? So I'm Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Listen to this. Chov dalet hayne yos Yoshua anshe knesses agdoilo al koisvei sfarim tefillin umezuzos shelo yisashru. They fasted 24 fast days. The great Nevi'im and Chachamim, in order for scribes to have a limited income. Why? Because she'ilmali misashrin en koisvin. The world needs scribes. And if they would already make it, then what would motivate them to keep on writing? To make sure that there's always a supply to the demand of Sifrei Torah, Tefillah, and Mezuzahs. We're not speaking about the merchants who buy and sell from them. They can make a lot of money. Right? Eichlers, Gesundheit hate. We're speaking about the scribes themselves. There's no bracha in their money. Tanach Rabbanan, Koisvei Sfarim Tefillah Mezuzahs. Hein, they, Vitagoreyan, and their vendors, Vitagoreyan, which is normally they would write it, they would sell it to the wholesalers would sell it to the retailers. And the cholo is and anyone who's occupied in Malach HaShamayim. And what does that include? You should know they won't have a siman bracha. Why? Like we explained, because there is a need for them to work. If not, we're not going to be able to access stam. But the im oiskim lishman, let's go back to what we learned above, that lishma is greater than shaloi lishma. But if they are oisik lishma, then they will see a siman bracha. Rashi says beautiful, because when a yid is on a mission to provide mezuzahs, even if he will become wealthy, he's still going to work. If a yid who wins the lottery will appreciate that his chus is to be a klei kodesh, and he won't stop being a klei kodesh, they can take a see a siman bracha, because it's not going to stop them. They don't have to work only out of need. Okay, Chai, let's start. Now we're going to Minhagim. Says the Gemara, Bnei Baishan. Baishan is a place. So the people that lived in Baishan, Nohug, there was a minig that began with their grandparents. The Lehavi Oslan Mitzur Letzidoin B'Mali Shapso. We had the sugya about first. You can't go on a proper ship 3 days within 3 days of Shabbos, unless you're going for a mitzvah. But then there are certain ships that never went out there in the ocean. It went near the shore. One was a trip that went from Tzur to Tzidoin. Tzidoin was a city in which Friday was a market day. Me'iked adin, one would be allowed to travel from Tzur to Tzidoin on a ship on Friday. It's close. You can go there. There's no issue of taking a ship before Shabbos. You'll have time to come back way before Shabbos comes in. Nevertheless, the original people in Baishan, they were machmer. They said, it's Friday. We're not going. We're not traveling to that marketplace. However, the kinderlach, the eneklach, they needed that day of work. They needed the income. So Asu Banayu, the descendants of the Bnei Baishan, came in front of Rabbi Yechanan and Amru Loy, and they told Rabbi Yechanan, listen, Avasin, our fathers, our grandfathers, Efshalahu, they were wealthy. They were able to afford the minig not to work Friday, not to go to the marketplace in Sidon. But Anan, we need this parnas. In other words, am I bound by the minig of my father or not? So Amar Lahu, to which Rabbi Yechanan responded, yes, you are. Kvar kiblu avesechem aleichem. Means when we begin a minig, once it takes hold, the minig goes on generations. As it says, Shma b'ni musar avicha. V'al tita shtoira simecha. And therefore, Rabbi Yechanan was giving them a bracha that they should be wealthy. What they needed is not for them to work on Friday. They needed the bracha for wealth. That Rabbi Yechanan gave them. But they were bound by the minig of their forefathers. I wanted to go further, but no, we'll start, God willing, tomorrow. We're going to have the next story will be the opposite story. We're going to see that sometimes if there is a minig, but the minig is not a good minig, the minig has to be undone. Just quickly read that the people of Chuzoi, they had a minig that they would separate challah from rice. Now, we know challah only has to be separated from the 5 grains. Rabbi Yosef undid that minig. So that will be the next story. We'll begin tomorrow about minhagim, the minhagim that have to be upheld, and there are minhagim that have to be outdone. Again, with the details, sometimes you have to be mataneder, and sometimes you don't even need hataras nadarim, God willing, to be
undone.
Rabbi, what about the chazanim on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur that get paid? Is it because they're preparing beforehand? What
I want to tell you, okay, let me say this. First of all, Tzvika, The Alter Rebbe already writes that people
What
are not.
about a shiksa you hire for Shabbos? That's also
Shiksa is much less problematic because a shiksa you can hire during the week as well. That's mutter. Because if she works for you even 1 hour in the week, that's called habla.
No, but a lot of us have just a Shabbos shiksa that's not during the week.
Okay, the Alter Rebbe, people are not that chamur. It's not ideal. Let me say one thing about what you said about chazanim. The reason why every city makes during Aseret Yemei Tshuva a concert, that was the reason. That's the origin of that minhag. In other words, they wanted that everyone should know that this chazan is going to perform during the week. And he doesn't get paid for that. Or you tell the chazan, we're paying you, the money that we're paying you, the $100,000 that you're getting paid for, this is just to appreciate how much money Tzvika is donating to the shul over here. The money that they charge these chazanim includes a concert.
The Slichas Motzei Shabbos, that concert? Seriously?
Whatever. They have to do a service for the community during the week. And then you have schar havla. B'diyuk. If not, you got yourself a problem. Now, again, there are many people that they're balkaidas and they don't read Mondays and Thursday. I know the Alter Rebbe writes, people are not that gung-ho on schar Shabbos, but here you see, there's no siman bracha. There's no siman bracha from schar Shabbos.
I think your shul should put it out to bid. Tzvika might have a point.
Good.